Hi, my name is Rebecca. I'm with College Bound Review. In this lesson, we're going to demonstrate a reading passage which is similar to what's found in both the SAT and ACT exams. On the SAT exam, the reading passage is the first section you'll encounter. It's about 65 minutes long, and you have 5 passages with a total of 52 questions. On the ACT exam, the reading section is the third section between the math and science sections, and you have 4 passages to read in 35 minutes for a total of 40 questions. So the first thing we do when we read these passages is at the very beginning of every passage, there's an introductory paragraph that gives a little bit of context to what you're about to read. So in this case, the passage is an excerpt of the Declaration of Independence approved by the Continental Congress on July 4th, 1786, in which the 13 American colonies broke all ties with Great Britain. It's always useful to read this. It's usually just 1 or 2 sentences long, so you get some context before you jump into the passage, especially when it's a fiction passage and it starts in the middle of a story, and it's helpful to know who the characters are and where the setting is. I want to now show you the questions before we actually read the passage. I'm going to discuss a strategy that we like to encourage among our students, which is to briefly skim the questions before starting to read the passage to get an idea of the breakdown. The questions go chronologically, and they don't go from easy to difficult. So it's helpful to get an idea for where you can expect to look in the text for answers to questions. For example, in these questions, question 1, we see line 8. So at the beginning of the passage, relatively. Question 2, there's no line number. It seems more of a general question about what the Declaration of Independence is declaring. Question 3, there's no lines. Question 4, line 21. So it's going to be a little bit later near the end of the passage, as this passage is only about 30 lines long. And then if we look at the last 2 questions, questions 5 and question 6. Here, question 5 says based on the information in the passage. When you see something like this, that's typically a general question, so you will have to read the entire passage before you can answer a question like that. And the final question, question 6, the last line, so we know it can be at the very end. So now that we have a breakdown of the kinds of questions, we want to go back to the passage and break it up. So we know one of the questions was probably from the very first 2 paragraphs. Remember line 8. So that's going to be in there. And then the rest seem to be later. So in this passage, I'm going to read the first half, answer that first question, and then see if I can answer another one, possibly, and then come back and read the second half, pick up from where I left off, complete it, and answer the questions. So that's what I'm going to show you today. And the reason we do this is it's really difficult to keep your attention through a 65-minute section of pure 5 passages of reading. And it's very fast-paced, so you can't relax, so to speak, during this test section. And so for a lot of students, it's really helpful to read a paragraph and answer the questions directly afterwards. Not only does it keep your attention, but it also helps you in the long run, because if you've just read that part of the text, it's a lot easier to answer the question as the detail was right there, as opposed to having read the entire passage and then going back to something in the beginning, and it's a lot harder, and then you might have to actually reread that section. And so overall, we hope that this will improve the speed at which you can take the test. So let's start and read the first couple of paragraphs. So, when in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Okay, so that was the first two paragraphs, and I know there was a question about line 8. So if I now look at the first question, as used in line 8, unalienable is closest in meaning to what? So this is a vocab and context type of question where we're looking for the term unalienable and which of these answers does unalienable mean. So let's quickly refresh our memories and go back to line 8. So they endow by their creator certain unalienable rights. That among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Okay. So let's take a second and look through the answers and make your best guess. So we're all pretty familiar with that phrase, the Declaration of Independence. And if it's endowed by your creator certain unalienable rights, including life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that brings to mind, if they're endowed to you by your creator, that you can't be denied these rights. They are intrinsic to who you are. And so D is going to be the correct answer here. They can't be taken away. You could back into this answer and cross off some wrong answers. Here, foreign, alien on its own, that means foreign. So unalienable would be the opposite of foreign. So you can get rid of A for that reason. Idealistic, again, if something's idealistic, that's not the same. It's not the same definition as being intrinsic. It's something almost that you dream for if it's idealistic in an ideal world. So that's incorrect. And religious, it does mention creator in that sentence, but we're talking about undeniable rights, unalienable rights. And so D here is the best answer. Okay. Question 2. The Declaration of Independence declares freedom from Great Britain and power for the United States to do what? Having read what we have, I don't think we can answer this question yet, so let's return to the passage and continue from where we left off. Okay. So now that we've had that background, we can get to the point of this passage. So we, therefore, the representatives of the United States of America in General Congress assembled, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, do, in the name and by authority of the good people of these colonies, solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are, and of right ought to be, free and independent states. That they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved. That as free independent states, they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and do all other acts and things which independent states may have right to do. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. Okay, so that's the main message of this excerpt, the passage, the Declaration of Independence. So now that we've read the entire thing, we get fit to answer the rest of the questions. So, question 2, the Declaration of Independence declares freedom from the Great Britain and the power of the United States to do what? So again, I'll give you a second to look over these answers and make your best guess. Okay, so if we look down, start with A, seek to take control of Great Britain. We know with independence, it really is in the name. They want to be independent. The United States want to be independent from Great Britain. Not so much as taking control of Great Britain, but taking control of their independence. So this is going to be an incorrect answer. B, independently make decisions regarding war, peace, and trade. That looks like a good answer based on what we read. We can go back and review after looking over the remaining answers. C, give all individuals personal freedom from taxation and other government regulations. So there is this freedom idea, which is definitely accurate, but taxation and government regulations, not so sure about that. We can go review and make sure, and then choose a national religion. Again, there's nothing really in the text about religion, so let's review the passage. So down here, what we had underlined, so they want to be free and independent states, absolved from all allegiance, nothing about taking over, which is why we got rid of A. Get rid of political connection. And in free and independent states, they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce. That sounded a lot like answer B, to establish trade and be free to do what they want. That being said, for part C, it mentioned being free from taxation and other government regulations. In this text, if we review, let's erase this and look above. It says up here that it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it. It referring to a form of government, and then to institute a new government. So you can see in this part of the text that they're not trying to be free from any government regulations. They just want to change the government they're currently under. So now we know that answer C here is incorrect. So here we go. We get rid of A, as we said before, get rid of C, give all individuals personal freedom from taxation of the government regulations. We know that they want a government, they just want to use one that does not abuse its power. There's nothing about choosing its national religion, but B is definitely the best answer here. Independently make decisions regarding war, peace, and trade. And so now after answering 2, we come into question 3. Which choice provides the best evidence for the answer to the previous questions? So question 3 and question 2, you'll see this on the SAT reading exam. We refer to these as duo questions, as in part 3 has to do with the previous question. And typically, if you either get both of them right or both of them incorrect, because for part 3, you're now looking for the textual evidence that you drew upon to answer question 2. So in this case, we actually just spent a lot of time on question 2, and I think you can point to the same text that we were just pointing to. So if we go back to the passage, we were looking down here. As free and independent states, they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce. So this is around lines 23, 24. And that is one of our options here. So that is going to be the correct answer. If you're not so sure and you see a duo question for answering question 2, it's quite useful to actually go through each of these options for question 3 and see which makes the most sense, as each answer will likely match up. So it's kind of a mix and match section. But again, you really need to be careful and mindful of making sure that you take the time to be accurate and get both questions, because likely if you mess up one, you're going to mess up the other inherently. Okay, question 4. As used in line 21, absolved from all allegiance is closest it's in meaning to what? This is very similar to question 1. We have another definition, vocab in context question. Again, line 21. So let's go to the passage, just review for a second that line. Colonies are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and a political connection should be dissolved. Okay, so I'll give you a second to review the question and the answers given here and make your best choice. So if you're not 100% sure of the definition of allegiance, it's sometimes helpful to work out a context that you've used the word in. So what comes to mind here is Pledge of Allegiance. So you pledge allegiance to the flag. And in that context, you're really pledging your loyalty, right? You're committing. So the correct answer for 4, and the one that matches up the best here, is A. So if they're absolved, if you're absolved from something, you're free from it. Allegiance here being that loyalty that we just mentioned. The rest of these also do not make sense in this context. Forgiven for all conflicts. They want to be independent from Britain. They're not trying to be forgiven for any mistakes that they've made. Giving up right to citizenship. They want to be independent citizens. maybe they give up right to their British citizenship, but it's not giving up their right to citizenship in general. And finally, financial debt, released from all financial debt. That does not insinuate this independence in governmental sense. Okay, let's move on to the final 2 questions. So here, question 5. This was more of a general question. Based on the information in the passage, it can be inferred that the signers of the Declaration of Independence were what? So atheists, believers in a divine being, all members of the same church, or religious fanatics. So this question is aimed at the religious aspect of the passage. So that might not have been on our minds when we were originally reading it. So now it's going to be helpful to review and look for terms they use that would insinuate their religion. So at the beginning, they say God. They mention that creator when we talked about that unalienable rights for question 1. We keep on reading. Do we see any other mentions? So those are the main 2 I saw. Mention God and creator. So going back to that question, give you some time to look over the answers and make your best choice. So as we just looked into the passage, they mention God and they mention creator. So we know right away it's very unlikely that the signers were atheists, meaning they don't believe in God. The believers in a divine being, that would match up with their use of the terms God and creator. So they definitely believe in some divine being. All members of the same church. We can't infer that. We do not know exactly which church all these signers belong to. So that's unlikely to be the correct answer. Religious fanatics. And again, this is not the best answer, as text is more about them stating their freedom from Great Britain than trying to define a new religion. So there's not a huge emphasis on religion in that context. So B here is going to be the best and correct answer. And finally, the last question we come to, the last line of the Declaration of Independence serves to do what? Again, last line. So let's review the last line of the passage and make our selection. Okay, and for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. So the key verb here is we mutually pledge to each other. So I'm going to guess that's the main idea of this sentence. Review our question and make the best decision. Okay, so let's read through them. A, ask Great Britain to kindly consider the requests. I wouldn't say there's anything about asking them to kindly consider in the last line. B, demonstrate a total commitment on behalf of its signers. This definitely corresponds to what I just mentioned about that we mutually pledge our life. There's definitely a signifying all of them binding together to declare their independence. C, imply a willingness to negotiate. There was no terms of negotiation or no willingness in that last sentence. And D, threatening another war if they don't agree. At the same time, there was nothing really threatening about the last line besides them all saying that they're all going to work together to have this come to fruition. So get rid of those last 2 and the first one, and B here is going to be our answer. So I hope this was a useful lesson to get a sense for how you should approach these reading passages. On the test, you will not have as much time as we've just taken to review this. So this is really meant to give you a nice introduction, and as you do more practice, hopefully get the hang of briefly skimming the questions, gain a sense for how much you should read before approaching some of the questions, picking up from where you left off, and finishing out the passage. Thank you for watching this video, and good luck on your exam.